What's up, everybody? You're here with the Fly Guy. All right, today I just wanted to talk a little bit about the jig flies that I fish and the style of jig flies that I tie. I do fish a variety of jig flies for bass, but I also utilize them for trout, and I've caught carp and pike on them as well. So jig flies are really important. They're an important part of your arsenal as a fly angler, and tying them and fishing them can really help you get into deeper water, but also achieve a vertical retrieve just by using the differential between your floating fly line, a fluorocarbon leader, and a heavier weighted fly. So they're very versatile, and you can catch a lot of different types of fish with them. So before we get into these jig flies, I just kind of wanted to go over some of the materials that I use when I'm tying up jigs. I tie a variety of different jig flies, and I do use kind of a few different materials that move really well underwater, especially when I'm not doing anything to the fly. A lot of the jig flies that I design, the head goes straight down to the bottom with a hook point up. So, you know, a lot of jig flies are supposed to be designed like that. Some people like more of an angle. I like it kind of straight up and down because the tail can waggle and kind of tantalize fish, especially on a slow retrieve. I incorporate bunny fur, rubber legs, marabou, and synthetic hairs like ice fur and craft fur into my jig flies. There's just a few different styles that I tie and fish. So let's take a look at those now. The first two jig flies that I fish are the mini jig, and I usually tie that with like either synthetic hair or bunny fur as the tail, and then the headstand bass jig. They're different flies, and they do have a different profile in the water, and they sink differently. Now, the headstand bass jig is a great fly when you're fishing like creek smallmouth, or you're fishing early in the season when food items might be a little bit smaller. It is a more traditional style of jig fly in the fact that you have a longer hook. It's tied on a mustad streamer hook. And the recipe for this fly is actually on my website at tfgflies.com. It's a free download. You can go grab it, and it does have that style and model number of that mustad streamer hook listed. It's a down eye heavy streamer hook, but it's got the length. When you look at like a traditional jig that, you know, hard tackle guys use, it has a longer hook. And that's what this hook is designed to replicate. It's not an exact 90-degree angle hook eye on that hook, but it is downturned. And when you place those dumbbell eyes up towards that hook eye, right up against them, you get a very vertical drop. So you can achieve almost the same type of action without actually having a 90-degree jig hook. The headstand bass jig has caught me some really nice fish. I've caught some big carp on it. I've caught plenty of bass on it. And I've got some fishing footage linked below for you, so check that out. So another type of jig fly that I fish is kind of like a mini hair jig. I will also incorporate bunny fur or bunny strips into the tail end of this fly, but instead of using it like a traditional style long shank hook, I use a short shank hook. And these sink very quickly, and they sink with the hook eye straight down. They drop very vertical, and they work really well in creeks and streams where I don't want to fish a fly that has a super big profile. I kind of want an in-between size, not small, not large. I would consider it medium. And when I go into creeks with these flies, I can catch anything that's in there, especially if I'm fishing natural colors like olive brown and black or craw. Keeping it very simple. I've caught catfish, drum, bass, all kinds of stuff, including northern pike. And it's just a real versatile way to target these fish. And when they're feeding aggressively, you don't have to worry about needing a long hook, like you're not going to get the hook point in their mouth. Most of the time when fish are eating, if they eat it correctly, the way that they actually are designed to do, they always eat the front end of the fly first. If they're tail nipping, typically that means that you've got the wrong fly on. But these mini jig flies are great for small creeks and streams. Vary the materials on the back end of your fly. I use a mixture of craft fur and ice fur on the white version of this mini hair jig, but then like I show you here in these pictures, the bunny fur works great too. Bunny fur is probably one of the best materials for the back end of jig flies because it's kind of weighty when it's saturated with water, and it just the hairs and fibers really move in a great way when you're not really doing anything to the fly. River currents affect it great, and you can combine it with rubber legs to really achieve maximum action out of your jig flies. So if you're a beginning tyer and you want to try these out, vary your hook selection, try a few different hooks out and see which one works for you and what you like based on your fishing preferences and the conditions that you find yourself in on your home waters. The next two jig flies that I use are a little bit larger. They're definitely for your bucket mouth bass, your largemouth bass. It's the Creature of the Deep jig fly and then the marblehead worm. Both have the same weight of dumbbell eyes up towards the head. They're both tied on a 60-degree jig hook, and the action is just great on them. Combination of bunny fur and rubber legs on the Creature of the Deep jig fly to really get a big profile and a lot of action, regardless if you're moving the fly or not. You can skip this on the bottom or slow hop it. Doesn't really matter. I've caught smallmouth on it. I've caught big drum on it. Big freshwater drum. I've got a video link below for you. You can check that out of the Creature of the Deep in action on a creek near my home. It was a really fun fish. But the marblehead worm is also a great fly, and it fishes all year long, spring through fall. And it's a traditional, kind of like an olive and brown with a little bit of chartreuse in there. And it just sinks immediately because there's not many materials on the fly. Because it's so streamlined, it sinks very quickly. And you can get down and fish in still water with this fly very well. I fish it in lakes a lot, and I have good success with it. I've caught bass in the spring, summer, and fall. So if you're a traditional bass guy, you're used to using hard tackle, spinning rods, bait casters, and you fished rubber worms or soft plastics, this fly is kind of designed with that in mind. So if you're kind of bridging the gap and you're wanting to give fly fishing for bass a try, go ahead and tie this fly on. It's not going to be a fly where you're going to just be able to go out there as a beginner and cast it around. It's a little bit heavier, it's a little bit bulkier. So for these two flies, the Creature of the Deep and the marblehead worm, if you've never cast a weighted fly before, you might want to kind of build yourself up to it. Start casting with some clousers, with some smaller dumbbell eyes. Start casting with some of these other smaller jig flies and work your way up. You've got to get your timing down or you're going to sink one of these big flies into the back of your neck or your skull, and it's not going to feel good. And I'm telling you, everybody's done it. Everybody's hooked themselves from time to time when they've been practicing their fly casting, especially with weighted flies. It just takes a little bit of practice to get dialed in, and one of the biggest things that I could share with you is when you're casting these jig flies, weighting is your best friend, and you'll understand what that means once you get in and start practicing with it. You're going to have to put a little bit more pop into your casting stroke, a little bit more effort. You're lifting a little bit more weight out of the water. It's not a parachute Adams. It's not a woolly worm or even like a small woolly bugger. This fly, these jig flies have weight. You're going to have to just put a little bit more pop in your casting stroke. But when you weight, you allow that fly to catch up with your casting stroke, with that fly line turning over, and you'll start to get the feel of when that fly is getting towards the back end of your cast, and then you can accurately deliver that fly. You shouldn't be casting these flies at a distance anyway, but you still need to be able to cast them accurately at a distance of at least 20, 25, maybe 30 feet when you're picking structure apart and trying to put these flies into fish holding territory. So not long casts, but they do need to be accurate, and you shouldn't be scared to cast them because you haven't done it before. So just keep that in mind. Get yourself built up in your confidence and go out and practice with these flies a little bit, and you'll get the hang of it. I will be going over a little bit on casting some of these heavier flies and some things that you can do to make life just a little bit easier on the water. So stay tuned for that. I'll have some more tips on that as we go on. Also, all the jig flies that I tie and fish, I do use dumbbell eyes for the weight. Those dumbbell eyes, I can vary the size and weights. I know what I'm getting, and if I need to add lead wire to it, I will, but a lot of times I don't. It just depends on what type of fishing I know I'm going to encounter and, depending on the system that I'm fishing. If you want, you can actually tie all these jig flies without the dumbbell eyes. You can actually use a cone head and really just put a lot of lead wire into that cone to hold it in place. That's a good way to tie jig flies like that. I don't do it personally, but that's another method for you to try out. All right, so I hope that gave you guys some ideas on some jig flies that you guys can tie up for bass. These will work for trout, especially the smaller ones like the headstand jig or the mini hair jig that I showed you. All you got to do is downsize everything and just shrink it down, and you'll go out there and have a good time with trout. I fish the creek bugger trout version, which is like a hybrid between a jig fly and a woolly bugger. I've caught a nice brown trout on it in Maryland. I've always caught trout on it, but haven't got too much on video, but I do have some footage below for you, so check that out. I will link fishing footage below for you to some of these jig flies. I think I've got fishing footage for just about every one, and more of that is coming because I fish jig flies a lot. They're very versatile, and you should have some in your fly box if you're going to target bass especially. I will put the tying recipes for all these flies up on my website at TFG Flies for you. They will also be linked below, so check that out. I've got a growing database of fly patterns up on my website for you to check out. So if you're thinking about getting into fly tying or fly fishing and you just don't really know where to start, you can get in touch with me on my website and I'll try to steer you in the right direction. If you're new to fly tying or you just want some personalized lessons and you want to kind of get yourself started in tying flies for bass, or you might be a beginner tyer and you need some help learning the basics, I can help you with that. I've been a fly tying and fly fishing instructor for most of my adult life, and I love tying flies. It's actually how I got into the sport of fly fishing. I didn't actually fish first. I actually started tying flies, and it just exploded from there. I became obsessed with tying flies that were durable and kind of matched some of the food items in some of the local creeks that I live by. So fly tying is my original passion. It came before actually I picked up a fly rod. So I'd love to help you out. Check out my booking feature on my website. You can book lessons with me, and I can get you started and get you rolling in this wonderful sport. If you like this video, go ahead and hit thumbs up, and if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel for more fly fishing and fly tying videos. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Take care, and we'll catch you next time.